Hi, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today, Why Activating Your Workforce Matters. My name is Meredith Gattery, and I'm going to be your host. A couple of quick things for housekeeping before we get started. One, we're going to have a question and answer at the end of today's session, so please feel free during the entire webinar to use that button at the bottom of your screen and ask any questions that you'll have. Secondly, excuse me, we want to make this an interactive webinar, so we're going to have a couple of polls throughout. They'll just pop up on your screen when it's ready. Please go ahead, give us your opinion. We'd love to hear what your thoughts are. And then we're going to share out the results for all of those polls with everyone after everyone has taken it. And then lastly, we are going to have a Twitter chat after this webinar with Robyn and Mark Ragan. All of the information is there on your screen right now. You can tweet at Dynamic Signal, at Robyn Hannah, at Mark Ragan CEO, and then we have the hashtag DISI webinar and DISI chat. So please make sure you join us after today's webinar there. And of course, we're going to be sending out a recording of today's webinar to everyone who is here joining us. So make sure to look for that in your inboxes by the end of the day. Without any further ado, I'd love to have Robyn and Mark go ahead and join us. So come on, guys. Hi, Robyn.
Hello, good morning or afternoon, everyone.
Perfect. And Mark?
Hello, I'm here. I'm trying to get my video started here. I need you guys to unlock me.
Oh, okay. We'll go ahead and figure that out. Robyn, why don't you go ahead and get started as we do that?
As we're working on the video, Mark, you have been around the communication, social media, marketing, and HR space for a very long time, and you've watched this transformation happen over the last couple of decades and then really ramp up in the last few years. You talk all the time about how it's no coincidence that the companies on Fortune's best place to work list are always really great at internal communication. Tell me a little bit about sort of and share with the audience, I feel like everyone knows who you are, but maybe a little bit about who you are and what you do at Ragan Communications and how you've sort of seen the rise of communication to this place where it's truly, as you said, the bedrock foundation for business success.
Well, first of all, Robyn, I wanted to thank you for having me. Can you hear me okay?
Oh, yeah.
Good. I just wanted to take a moment to praise both Robyn and Dynamic Signal. I've worked with them now for going on 2 years, and they are such an amazing organization. They really live the talk. And Robyn, who is on our Communication Leadership Council, has been a huge participant in our twice yearly meetings and really knows her stuff. And you'll see that in the questions she asks over the next hour. But, Dynamic Signal's been really a force. You guys have done some great studies that I've used, research reports, the kind that we're going to talk about later. So anyway, thank you very much for your contribution to communications. Now, to answer your question, Ragan is the oldest company really serving corporate communicators in the US and maybe even in North America. My father started the company in 1968, and we were just a small print newsletter company back then, Robyn, because back in 1968, what did communicators do? They did these little print newsletters, and I wonder if anybody knows what they were called back then. Robyn, I wonder if you even know what they were called back then. Employee newsletters, those little print newsletters that used to carry what I call the propaganda of the organizations, because that's what it was. What were those newsletters called?
It wasn't just the employee handbook or the weekly, daily?
No, if you were 30 years older, you would probably they were called house organs. House organs. Now, it's kind of weird, isn't it?
Yeah. Why that?
Yeah, I don't know why that, but that's what they were called. Well, my father edited a house organ at the Ford Motor Company because that was the principal way we communicated with employees back then. I joined the company in the early 90s, right about the time the internet came on the scene, and Ragan became a leading force in teaching communicators what this thing called the web really meant. And at first, that was all about PR, right? Everybody cared about PR and marketing. And then, believe it or not, it wasn't only until about 10 or 12 years ago that employee communicators really started getting on the bandwagon and saying, hey, wait a minute. This new thing we call the internet, the digital experience, can really, improve employee engagement and culture scores.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what has happened. So from 68 to 2019, Ragan has served both the internal and the external side of communications. I'll just end with this one thing because we have a lot of material to go through.
Yeah.
Last year, we probably launched the most successful thing we've ever done in this 50-year history, and that is our Communication Leadership Council. And I want to call on anybody who is watching this or listening that if you're interested in climbing on board this council, as I said, Robyn's on it. We have 80 brands right now that are on the council, and it's made up of the heads of employee communications and corporate communications from around the world. So write to me if you're interested.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. Yeah, I mean, the reality is everyone's looking for new information to figure this out because the world has changed, right? Technology has fundamentally changed the way that we communicate in our everyday lives, and work has to catch up. Oh, and there's your video.
Yeah. Hi, everyone.
The employee experience has to catch up because our work is mobile. We use our phones and apps all day long for work. And employees expect more, right? They expect communication at work to work like it works in their everyday lives. And they expect a specific kind of experience at work. And also speed is more important than ever. With all the communication channels we have and the access that we have, we need to be able to quickly disseminate information and news to the right people at the right time on the channels that are most convenient for them to receive that communication based on the way they work, and they have to get it now. And so this is sort of the problem that we've seen today, right? That the workplace communication has sort of fallen behind the rest of the world. I mean, we have stats that say people check their phones 74 times a day. I would argue that might be a little low. And now we can look at our screen time and we know. And, most adults are getting their news on their smartphone. But how many companies are delivering employees their news on their smartphone?
Not nearly enough. Not nearly enough. And with the technology that is out there today, including yours, by the way, we use dynamic signal at Ragan. I should get that out right away and love it, by the way. With the technology platforms that are available today, I should never hear the question I'm asked at every single conference we do at Ragan. How do I communicate to the dispersed, deskless workforce? It really blows my mind that I still hear that is the number one question, because the technology is there today. And let me go farther than that. The apps that Dynamic Signal has, the platform that you have and that other companies have, they allow you to measure every step along the way.
Sure.
And you're going to hear me say this many times, Robyn. Measurement is the key to power as an internal communicator. It's the key to influence. It's the key to your career. Please take this to heart. So many internal communicators come like I did from a liberal arts background. A lot of them were journalists. Some of them were English majors. Some of them are incredible writers. They're not necessarily into measurement. But I would say that if you want to get ahead in your organization, if you want to change your culture, if you want to show a constant moving of the needle and impress your executives, you've got to do what marketing has been doing for the last 2 decades. Care about measurement and care about mobile platforms.
Yep. Because here's the reality, right? We've got these phenomenal writers putting fantastic content out on their internet, and what we're seeing is that only 13% of employees even visit the internet.
That's
and
right.
Only 45% have access to it. That means over half our workforce doesn't even have access to the internet. Many employees, think about all the retail employees that you engage with every day, that you see in your day-to-day life as you're shopping or going to restaurants. They don't have a corporate email address, but they are so much the brand to us as consumers, right? And we know that 85% of adults are getting their news on mobile. And deskless workers are on the rise, and they already make up the majority of the workforce. So it's no wonder we see stats like 74% of employees feel like they're missing out on company news and information, right?
I was with a CEO from another organization, and I have to say I'm a CEO, and I will say this:
You are.
unless you're coming from Silicon Valley, a lot of CEOs, let's just don't tell anybody this. A lot of CEOs are far behind in their technical knowledge. I'm one of them. But what I love about when I use the Dynamic Signal app, and this would go, I'm assuming, to perhaps your competitors as well, is I can sit there at a conference 2,000 miles away from our headquarters and do an interview with this phone with one of my customers that is incredibly important to the business of Ragan, and then instantly send it back to the home office. I know to all of you who are tech savvy, you go, yeah, right, Mark, that's been around for years. But what hasn't been around is internal communicators seizing the power of that tool. And I love it. I think a lot of other CEOs would love it. So I don't know. I'm sold.
Yeah. So that's an important note, I think, right? A lot of the conversations that communication professionals are having today are, how do I get the technology to solve these problems? Because many of them just don't even know it exists, right? They've been handed an intranet, and that's what they've always known. It's the tool they've always had. And so they think that's kind of all there is. So what are you saying to people who are feeling kind of stuck? Are you encouraging them to just really kind of dig into the technology that could be available to them? Because, again, we have apps for HR, we have, for payroll, we have apps, we have apps for our expense reports, we have apps for, Google Docs on our phones. So there are apps for all these different, utilities and tools, but it's like communication professionals maybe just haven't considered that.
Well, let me address that. Yeah, I don't think the problem is actually with the folks that are listening to this webinar. I don't think it's the problem. I don't think 9 out of the 10 people that are listening to this webinar, we're preaching to the choir. They would love to have a tool that gets key messages out to employees and also allows them to measure every step along the way. That's not the problem. They're not the problem. The problem are the folks above them. The problem are the folks that say, okay, I get it. We should keep employees in tune with what's going on, what the strategy is. I get it, employee engagement, but we don't have the money for it. And you, communicator, have not shown me the connection between employee engagement and communication and the bottom line. And that's what most of the people here hear all the time.
Yes. So for the audience, I just want everyone to know we are going to kind of flip between a few slides and just Mark and I talking in conversation. So you're not missing any slides. We just didn't want you staring at slides the whole time, and we didn't really want you staring at our faces the whole time. So we're going to keep it mixed up.
Do you mind if I go backwards a little bit?
Sure.
Yeah. I wanted to, we dove right into solutions right away, but I also want to talk a little bit about what the problem is and how far we've come. So I've been in this industry. I took over from my father in 1995. I was a political journalist for 2 decades. And I took over Ragan just when the internet was coming on the scene. And what was employee communications back then? It was still employee newsletters. It was still face-to-face. Those were the 2 ways we communicated. And what was it like back then in the early 90s? It was mostly propaganda. And I'm sad to say there's still a good percentage of companies that still see communication as just, force-feeding employees what they think they need to know. But gradually, as the internet came on the scene, the discipline of employee communications kept getting better and better as digital started to leak into their lives, and they started to see the potential of things like digital newsletters and intranets, and we can get to intranets in a moment. Employee communicators started to get more tech savvy. And of course, they're the ones out there, the ones at the great companies, the great innovative companies, the companies like the 100 best companies to work for, Fortune's list. They're out there pushing these technical solutions. But it's not all technical, Robyn. You know, a lot of it has to do with the content itself, right? You can have the best darn app in the world for employee communications, but if you're pushing out what I call crap, the technical term, if you're pushing out propaganda and crap and news that employees don't care about, if you're not a good brand journalist, if you're not a good brand journalist, and I can talk about what that means later, but mostly it means having your finger on the pulse of the company at all times and writing simply and clearly. If you're not doing that thing, then what platforms aren't going to matter?
Right. Yep. We talk about this all the time. Great technology can happen to bad people, right? So
exactly.
It's a mix of art and science, but at the end of the day, I think it's important to recognize that communication has a bottom line impact on the business and it impacts business goals and objectives. And I think that's a good time to head into our first poll question.
Sure.
So we are going to launch that poll question. Does leadership at your organization understand the business impact of effective communication? Do you think that they really understand that communication is not just soft, it has a business impact, either positive when you're doing it great, or it can have some negative implications if you're not doing it great, right?
Absolutely. And it's going to be really fascinating to see what the results are here, because I think that here we go. Let's see. But I think that number should be ticking up every year. As, you know, in line with what I just said a few minutes ago, I think we're becoming more sophisticated in the way that we communicate, and we're becoming more effective.
For anyone who's listening and not actually able to look at the screen right now, I just want to make sure we read those results. That 31% said, hell yes, their leadership understands the business impact of effective communication, which is great. That number is higher than we've seen in past years, right? 49% says, yes, slowly but surely they're coming along. And I think, you know, there's a lot of organizations out there like Dynamic Signal, like Ragan, IBC, PRSA. They're all really trying to add to this narrative and show the data. Nielsen, Gallup, Gartner, they're all talking about how communication has a significant impact on the business. So we're starting to have people catch up. And then there's the 21% that our hearts go out to you, and we know, we get it. It's hard.
So why have those numbers come up? I will tell you right now that 10 years ago, those numbers would have been half of what they are now, if not more. Why are those numbers coming up? One word: employee retention. You know, we're dealing with a generation of lily padders. We're dealing with, when I got into the business, and for the first, say, 15 to 20 years at Ragan, we had zero turnover. Maybe one or two people left. Now we're seeing the same pattern. You know, every 2 or 3 years, employees move on. Now, we managed at our company to stop that. We managed to stop the hemorrhaging. And how did we do it? It's not going to come as no surprise to you. We did it through communication. We did it through a relentless focus on engagement. We do an annual audit every year, something I hope everybody who's listening is doing. Are you doing an annual communication audit? Are you doing an annual employee engagement audit where you know exactly what people like about your company and what they don't like about your company? And it's the communicator's job, Robyn, to hold management's feet to the fire. In other words, we've all been in that situation where we did the survey and the survey did not come back the way the C-suite wanted it to come back.
Sure.
And guess what they do? They don't even publish the survey results. And you know what they say? Oh, that's going to hurt morale. That's going to hurt morale. It's the exact opposite. What hurts morale is when people don't know where they are in terms of the context of the organization and where the company.
And again, we're seeing that effective employee communication and engagement is truly at the core of these successful companies. When we talk about things like retention, right? Keeping your talent and the tribal knowledge that they come with and the relationships that they've built for your organization, that alone is significant, but the cost to recruit, hire, train new employees is significant. So
It's amazing.
reducing costs alone is a huge benefit of strong internal employee communication and engagement. Not to mention, when employees have the news and information they need delivered quickly to them in a way that's convenient and not disruptive, we're more agile as organizations. We're reducing the risk. And at the end of the day, all of these things benefit the business and really help grow the business, grow the brand, and improve the customer experience, right? You actually have a great story about your recent trip to Disney.
Oh, yeah, this
that?
was phenomenal. Well, first of all, we've been working with Disney for 7 years. They're our partner on our annual social media summit. And it's the biggest event we have of the year. So I've really gotten to know Disney employees, but not just executives. So every time I go, I got my hair cut at Disney World, and I asked the hairstylist a bunch of 10, 15 questions about what it was like to work at Disney. What are your benefits like? How do they communicate to you? There was not a single Disney employee, from the hairstylist to the driver of what they call their minivans, who was not on top of the answers. I was so impressed. And we often talk about brand ambassadors, right? We talk about how important it is. This was a great example of that. And the story you're referring to is I used one of their minivans. Think of it as like an Uber. Disney works through the company Lyft, and they have their own minivan. Get it, Minnie Mouse? And the driver, I tried to stump him on my 15-minute trip back to the hotel. I said, why is the railroad shut down that goes around Magic Kingdom? My daughter loves that. He gave me not only a thorough explanation, he told me when it was coming back online, they were doing it because they're building a new roller coaster. Then I started to ask him about the history of Disney. And I got an entire history from him on Walt and his family. And I thought, this is exactly what employee communications is about.
Yep, it truly is, right? You give every employee a voice. You make them part of your storytelling efforts. And we do that by delivering an exceptional employee experience. And these are the things that we just talked about, right? Tell me who in leadership should be caring about this.
Oh my gosh, the top person of all should be caring about this. The CEO.
So this is not just a CHRO or the CMO.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Again,
everyone.
I'm the CEO of my organization. Two of the most important people in my organization are the ones that are in charge of internal comms and measurement, because retention is such a huge thing for us. It's what you said earlier, Robyn. The cost of replacing an employee is so stratospheric that I will do everything I can to not lose an employee. And that all depends on communication and measurement.
Yep. Yeah. So actually, communication should be a priority for the CFO, huh?
Yes.
It's helping us grow our business. It's helping us save money. It's increasing profits. It's actually having such a significant impact.
So here's a tip. Here's a tip. If you want to become powerful in your organization, and let me back up a little. Most of the people that are on this webinar know how many times I've said, are you an order taker? Do you feel management make you feel like you should have a Kinko's apron on and you're standing behind a communication desk as they tell you to do all these tactical things? I need a brochure. Can you get me a brochure? So I always say, how do you go from being an order taker to having a seat at the management table? And it's through communication, but more importantly, it's through measurement. Can you imagine a time where you were presenting a report to management, say once a week, on what employees are feeling? How are they thinking? Do they have a grasp on the strategy of the organization? If you were able to
know your goals for the quarter.
Yeah. You would become
how your values play out.
Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I'm going to move us into our next poll question, which is coming up on your screen. What does having an engaged workforce mean to you? And you can choose all the ones that you think are relevant here. So when you think of an engaged workforce, what does that mean to you right now? And I have a feeling that your answer may shift by the end of this webinar. But all right, looks like we've got our responses in. So the number one here is that they are highly innovative and proactive. That is interesting. So I'm actually going to take us through some other slides and actually talk about what the difference is between an engaged employee and an activated employee. But loyal to the company, that's huge, right? They do their job well, but don't go above and beyond. That's not what anybody kind of wants, right? That's clearly not an employee who's feeling like they've had a great experience. But the highly innovative and proactive employees are what we really want. We know that those really drive our business forward because they feel really good about the work that they're doing. And this is kind of how we are looking at. Did we share these results with you guys? Everyone saw that. Okay. So this is how we kind of are looking at the world here, that there's this communication to activation maturity curve, where you start with communication as a foundation to connect your employees, to make them feel integrated into the company, to know who you are, know who your values are, like they are informed. And then you move into this engaged component where they're productive and they're efficient and they're maybe engaging with the content that you're sharing, or at least you've got measurement tools to know that they're at least seeing it, right? And they're loyal. But the next step after that is really the activated employee, right? Those are the ones who are proactive. Those are the ones who are innovative. Those are the ones who are highly collaborative, who are excited to tell your story because they're excited to be a part of this company because they feel valued and informed, because they've been connected, they've been engaged, and now as organizations, we've equipped them and empowered them to be active. And I think that's the key component, right? It's not just about engaging employees, right? We need to then provide them with the tools and tell them, like, you have been blessed, you are empowered, go forth and tell the story, right? And are you seeing some confusion, Mark, still about sort of the progress here, right? Because a lot of people come in and they want these activated employees. They talk about employee advocacy, and they just want to start there.
I think I think everything you outlined is absolutely correct, right? You've got to get people information first, and you have to get them information where they want it. And you see me pointing to my palm because people want it on their phone. I wish I could shout this from the mountaintops, but let's begin there. So they want it where they want it, when they want it. The whole idea of controlling the flow of information from top down, it just doesn't work anymore, right? So that's one thing. Second, so once you have that information and you're giving that to them, then you got to measure to make sure that they understand it. Because just pounding people with information doesn't mean anything. If the boss says, well, did you tell them about our upcoming town hall? And you say, I told them 30 times, that's an irrelevant figure. What we really need to know is, did they get the message? Did they get it? And that's what these mobile apps allow us to do today, in which, so you go from giving them the information, making sure they understand the information, and then measuring the action that they take, right?
Sure. Yeah, because truly, it's a bit like impressions in the PR world for all of our external communication professionals and the marketing people who may be joining us today. We talk a lot about impressions, and we now know that they're kind of meaningless, right? They didn't actually see it. It's kind of a hollow vanity number. And so I think on the internal side, the equivalent is, well, we sent out 5 emails and we wrote, please read in the subject line, and we used 6 exclamation points. So obviously they read it. Or we printed out our newsletters and put them in the break room, or there's break room posters. Like, there's no way to measure that. So you can't count that as communication because we don't know that they've actually received it, that they understood it. There's no way to show that they've engaged with it, right? And so that measurement piece you keep talking about is really critical, so that we know, are we moving up this continuum? And I know that this takes time. So how do you respond to the leaders across marketing, HR, PR, comms, CEOs who want to just jump ahead. They just want employee advocacy. They want an employee advocacy program. They want employees to talk about their brand. They want to, extend their social footprint. But they don't necessarily want to fix the other stuff. So how do you encourage them to get it right?
I scoff at it, because how can you ask employees, how patronizing is it to ask employees to magnify the messages that you send them through social if they don't like you, if they don't like the organization, if they're unhappy, if their morale is down, if they don't understand what their place is in the company? How do you expect them to do? It's like asking somebody to do you a favor who you just met. It's like those Geico commercial. Is it Geico? What's the commercial where no, it's not. It's Home Advisor, where it says, do you know any good roofers? And he says, yeah, I do. Okay, can you get me a quote? Get me 3 bids. Go out. Well, that's the equivalent of saying, hey, can you be an advocate for the company without answering the question, why? Why should I be an advocate? I don't like you. I don't like working here. I don't know.
Or maybe, it's even, they don't understand how they fit into the bigger picture. They don't understand why they matter. They don't know how they're valued. And they may not even have a clear understanding of the company's values and how that should play out in their job, or the company's mission and goals, or goals for the quarter. Employee advocacy is an outcome, right? It is something that comes once you have connected employees who you've engaged, and then you've empowered and equipped to be activated employees out in the world. But I get the draw. I know why people want to have great employee advocates. Everybody wants their employees talking about how wonderful it is to work there, and the great products that they have, and the amazing relationships they've built. We need to earn the right to be heard there. And I think that curve does take some time. Can you talk to us about 1 or 2 company examples where they've really invested in this process, where it was about, we need to connect to our employees first. We need to lay the right foundation. We need to engage them in a way that makes sense for them. And by the way, that's mobile for a lot of people, but it's not mobile for everyone, right? Like our engineers, for example, they're working in a development environment all day. They're coding. They're not necessarily on their phones, but something like Slack that might live in parallel to their working environment is a better way to push messages to them there, because it shows up where they are. Email does work great for some kinds of employees, but it doesn't work great for a lot. Most just want a push notification. So it's really about meeting employees where they're at, right? But that takes a lot of time and effort and like investment to get through this curve. So who's doing it right? Who have you seen make this transformation?
You need look no further than the Fortune list of 100 companies' best places to work. I've said this many times. Many people have heard me say it, including you. If you want to know the companies that communicate the best, the most effectively, they're on that list. Now, that isn't to say that there are companies that aren't on the list that communicate effectively, but those companies are on the list. Now, how do I know that? Because back when the Fortune list was being assembled years ago, I knew the vice president in charge of doing the data work that led to the selection of those companies. And I have a video somewhere on our website that says, you cannot get on this list if you are not communicating effectively, communicating honestly, communicating transparently, and also allowing employees to communicate back. We haven't even talked about that.
The feedback loop.
Yes. And that's, again, one of the things that your platform does so beautifully. And some intranets do this. It all depends on whether you have management that allows you to throw the switch. A lot of managers don't want to know what you think. But those companies on that list, the Fortune Great Place to Work list, especially the top 10. Now, I'll name a couple. My longtime friends at SAS, the business analytics company in Cary, North Carolina. By the way, gosh, they're going to hate me for saying this, one of the most open companies that you would ever wish for in corporate communications. They regularly do tours of their facility for communicators that are visiting. What do they have? They have an amazing intranet. They have amazing mobile platforms. They have amazing face-to-face platforms. And they have a very honest and candid leadership.
That's
Disney
great.
is another one. The Mayo Clinic is an amazing, on the healthcare side, is an amazing communication organization. There are many of them. One of your clients, Sutter Health, is a great communicator. And you know what I love about Sutter? They're always trying to improve. They're always looking, what's the next piece of technology we can use? They're always bringing experts in to help their communication staff.
Yeah, and they're really about their team stories, right? They're really about their employees, featuring employees. So as we go back to the idea of the employee experience, they want to showcase who their employees are. They believe they're all one team, Team Sutter. They talk about that all the time. And they really want to shine a spotlight on the employees and tell those stories. And staff, who's also a customer of ours, they are truly, they've moved through this continuum. It's not just about connecting and it's not just about engaging, but they do a survey. You know, those engagement surveys are really critical for them. But that activation piece is multifaceted for them, right? It's not just, great, you're engaged, now go talk about us. It's like, we want to train you. We're going to teach you how to build your personal brand on social media. And it's not just their knowledge workers, it's people from their daycare or their landscapers, right? Everyone has a story to tell, and everyone is a critical part of the company. And that's how they really work to showcase that the employee experience across every single role in the organization should be excellent.
And by the way,
that's why they're on that list all the time.
Here's a little key fact too. One of the great architects of the entire SaaS communication program works for Dynamic Signal. Little plug out there. My dear friend Becky Raby, who is absolutely amazing. And I'm sure you won't mind if I put this out there. Hey guys, listening to this, if you ever want Becky to talk to you about your internal comms program, she was there for, I think, 18 years. She's one of the principal architects of this award-winning communication program. And you guys are really lucky to have her. And, but anyway, I just wanted to say, throw that out there.
Yeah. No, we're big fans, and Becky again worked on the internet, and internet take a lot of heat, but the right companies with the right kind of engagement, they can do very well, especially if they have a technology tool that can sit on top of that internet and make sure that information is being dispersed to the right employees. It's very easy to find and things like that. And Gallup is finding these same numbers, right? As we go out to the world, we look that, this connect, engage, and activate, these three components really have benefits to the business across the board: greater retention, higher productivity, more profitability. And so back to what you were saying earlier, Mark, this needs to be on the mind of every CEO because it truly, truly impacts the business. And because those employee expectations have shifted so much, it's urgent, because if you don't get it right, you're going to lose productivity, lose profitability, and lose those great employees that we work so hard to get. So I'm going to take us into our third poll here. This is our final poll question. As you think about your employee workforce, what % of your workforce is truly activated? They're connected and informed and valued. They know who you are. They're engaged. They're sharing feedback with you. They're participating in your content. And now they've been equipped and trained and empowered to go be a part of your storytelling efforts. Which %? We're just going to let this run a little bit more. I still see some votes coming in. Awesome. Okay, let's see. Yeah, less than 50%, it looks like, is the big winner. 2% of you said 100% are truly activated. And if you were a part of making that happen, we're hiring. Just call me. More than 70% is another 2%, but overwhelmingly it looks like less than 50% of your workforce, and then less than 20% is a big chunk here too, 32. So Mark, do we still have you? Your video is here. Okay, good. So does that sound right to you when you hear like less than 50% of our workforce is activated, and for 30% they said it was less than 20%? Does that sound
Yeah.
pretty accurate to what you've
Yes.
seen out in the market?
Yes, I would say that's not, I'm actually think that's a little bit high.
Yeah.
Getting to that activated level is so difficult. It's really difficult to get there. We shouldn't underestimate that.
Yeah.
You know, it's relentless communication. Again, coming back to those rules. Do you know what is not working in your communication?
Right. Sure.
Once you've established what isn't working, have you packaged that data up and presented to management? Once you've done that, have you figured out a strategy to improve it? Once you've done that, do you have the right tools? That is what you need to do. And think about that for a minute. That's a long journey, right?
Yeah.
And if we're relying on the internal communicator, they have to do all of that while they're putting out the newsletter, while they're being that Kinko's, you know, order taker.
Which is, again, why the right technology tools that can streamline that process are really critical. And I think that, you know, that's a big thing for Dynamic Signal. We deeply care about the impact of communication. We believe that when you activate your employees, you'll absolutely transform your business. And we're really excited to provide technology tools that do this. I do want to let everyone know, Mark, you mentioned this earlier, Dynamic Signal every year does this annual State of Employee Communication and Engagement study. Our results are dropping 319. It's like an album. It's dropping three, and it's a Tuesday. That's perfect. That's when albums drop. But we have seen some sad but accurate, we're not surprised, results around the state of stress in the workplace, the percent of employees who want to quit their job because they're just fed up and stressed out with all the different communication tools, not feeling communicated to. Communication was a major, major component of workforce stress and employees wanting to quit. And I can't share those numbers just yet, but I will say there's a huge opportunity and an urgent opportunity for communication, HR, marketing to work together to make a shift that is going to absolutely impact every single business when we do it right.
And to tie it into the theme of this webinar, the way you use that shift is by getting ahead of the problem. So I hope everybody by now who has heard me understands that if you have the right tools to communicate and then to measure after you communicate. Think of the power you have now to be able to present reports to your CEO and to the management team saying, hey guys, I think we have a problem. I know where that problem came from too. And I can tell you where it originated, and I think I have a solution. And it's not just you saying this, it's the data. And Robyn, you've heard me say my favorite quote of all time is never go to your boss as an internal communicator and say, I think we should do this. They don't care what you think. I hate to tell you this. They just don't care. What you say is the metrics tell us that this is what we should be doing.
Right. That's right. And speaking of the metrics, we recently did a customer impact study. So we took all of these great customers that we work with, and we're really fortunate to work with over 350 companies around the globe who are truly, truly investing in the idea of creating an activated employee base because they know it's going to transform their business, and they care deeply about improving the experience at work for these employees. And we took we did a pretty comprehensive study and took the anonymized aggregated results. And this is the positive business outcome that we're seeing from using technology to connect, engage, and activate your employees. And I don't think this is surprising to you, Mark, right? These, increase in CEO approval, brand awareness increasing, employees actually being reached for once. They're not missing out on the news and information that they need to get. Faster responses during a crisis, getting employee feedback, which, you talk a lot about engagement, and that is a two-way street, right? So I don't think anything here is surprising for you. You probably see this with all of the organizations with whom you're working as you take them through sort of the communication audit to get their benchmark out through sort of the strategy that they're putting into place and the tools they're using to execute it. That any additional thoughts on these, Mark, or anything that you see happening that's not listed here that you think is a benefit of communication and engagement? And we might have
we just lost
you.
It's probably the blizzard.
Oh, that is true. Mark is in Colorado, and there is a serious winter storm happening right now. So with that, I think we're going to turn it over to Meredith.
Perfect.
And hopefully Mark will join us back in.
Yeah, hopefully he's able to get back connected. But thank you so much, Robyn. And if Mark is able to get back, well, I'll be sure to we send him a thank you again.
That his power went out from the blizzard.
Oh,
but I can, and the internet's trying to reboot.
No worries. Well, I mean,
I've got him on text, so I can actually text him questions also.
That would be funny. Well, I mean, at least good thing that we're at kind of the question and answer part of today. So if you do have any questions, if you have one for Mark, we'll be sure to follow up with him. But if you have any for Robyn, please go ahead and answer, use that question and answer button on the bottom of your screen. And then I'm going to go ahead and just ask a couple of these questions to you, Robyn, and hopefully we're able to get Mark back on here. So the first one that I have here is about if I start talking to about my employee activation in my organization, people are just going to say that that's marketing speech. How can I go ahead and make that into like very plain language?
Yeah, I think technically it's marketing speak because it's our marketing speak. No, I think it just makes sense, right? Like I think you just really need to have a very human, very normal conversation. Mark Ragan is back.
Perfect.
Are we still on?
We are, Mark. Our first question was just now around, we can't just go to your leadership and say, I want to connect, engage, and activate our workforce. It just sounds like marketing speak, right? So how do you have that conversation? And I was just starting to say that it just needs to be a really candid conversation. We need to improve the employee experience. Our employees' expectations have changed, and they are our most valued asset, and they will transform our business when they feel great about the work that they're doing and when they're equipped to do their jobs better. And I don't think you need like the maturity curve of connect, engage, and activate is a great visual tool. But I think when you just sit down and have a really normal conversation, this makes inherent sense to people. I think people will always kind of nod, right? But having that data is key. Do you have anything to add there, Mark?
Nothing communicates better than bad news. Do a communication audit, and I'm going to address Emily Bliss's question in a minute. Do a communication audit. There will be bad news. I guarantee it. And in fact, if you're like most companies, it could even be horrible news. There's going to be shocking stuff that the executive team doesn't even realize exists among employees. Use that bad news to get their attention. Go to them with the results of that communication audit and say, look, I know you don't want to face this, but if we don't change these 2 or 3 factors, we're going to be in a lot of trouble. I guarantee you when that audit is done, when that communication audit is done, you're going to have so much ammunition to use to get the tools that you want, to be able to change the programs that you want. So what is involved in a communication audit? Emily asked that question. It's actually fairly simple. You do a survey, you do focus groups with both employees and focus groups with management. Once that's done, and I can offline go into a lot more detail than that, then you write the strategy. Okay, this is what employees are telling us. This is what we have to do right now. And this is what we have to do over the long term.
Yeah, and by the way, I think that's super helpful. Go to your glass door. I mean, your executives are looking at Glassdoor. They're paying attention, and they know what the CEO approval rating is. I guarantee you, every CEO knows his approval or her approval rating, right? I like the comments are there. And also, I think what's really important on Glassdoor, when you think about your brand and how that feels to people, look at the people who wrote a review from an interview, because your employees living your brand values out in those interview processes, that translates to their experience, right? We are all ambassadors of our brands as soon as we self-identify as an employee. And I actually think it's really telling to see how outsiders experience your company in the interview process. And so those are like, show your glass door to to your leadership and say, this
Let
is
me
where
tell
we're
you
at.
something.
Want
You
to be
couldn't
better?
Robyn, you couldn't be, you couldn't be more on the money as usual. I'm on Glassdoor once a week. I'm the owner and founder of the company, co-founder of the company, and I am on Glassdoor all the time. It is incredibly effective, what you suggest. And we're a small company, by the way. Just imagine the data you could get from Glassdoor if you were a bigger company. Getting back to Emily's question, she asked, what are some of the things that comms audit can reveal? Well, a lot. It can tell you what channels people like the most. It can tell you how people are frustrated that they don't have a mobile channel. That's one of our key questions. Ragan does a lot of communication audits for our clients. One of our key questions is, do you wish you had a platform on a mobile device that you could get information from and give upward communication back to management? Always gets very high scores. So that's one thing. So it's going to tell you what tools people are using. It's going to tell you what they think of the content. You know, if there's too much propaganda, too much jargon, too much useless claptrap, they're going to tell you. They're going to tell you specific things like, I hate the CEO's, you know, weekly column or weekly post. You want to have that level of specificity. The more specific the findings, the more powerful you're going to be in affecting change.
Mark, I think that's so true, and it's so important for people to really be able to look at that and kind of utilize that in order to connect and help kind of build the brand for the company externally, not just in marketing, but also in kind of those communications with prospective people that are going to work at the company. We only have a few minutes left, and I have a couple more questions here for people. So what are some of the most examples, and you started touching on this, Mark, of innovative communication tools that most effectively are activating employees?
Well, I hate to sound self-serving, but platforms like yours. I mean, I doubt that there are many companies that you could find that have taken the plunge into mobile employee engagement platforms and don't like them. I mean, they may not like the particular software technology, but you're going to find very few companies that say, oh, you know something, this wasn't really worth it. We don't want to communicate to our employees through mobile devices. Once you go there, it's hard to go back. And we know this because we know that every single human being we see in our world today is doing this. This is what they're doing all the time, whether we like it or not, Meredith, that we may not like that. One can make an argument that this has turned our life upside down. But the fact of the matter is we buy our goods on here. We communicate to our families on here. We find out about emergencies on here. We find out about simple things like the school closings, up here in my mountain community. Why are we using this to communicate vital information to our employees?
And I think to take it one step further, it's more than just like the act of communication. It's the different ways in which we can use that to communicate. So you can do videos, you can do surveys, you can do polling of different people. So it's not just so much about I can connect with them on their mobile device, but it's different ways that you can go about doing it. You can connect and share thought leadership with them and then have them connect to their larger audiences through their social networks. So there's both like the technological aspect and then what you're able to actually do with that.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing to like ask yourself. And I think the communication audit process also oftentimes gives you just some bottom like information that you need to know about how your employees want to work. But as you start to evaluate technology platforms, think like, does this work for my dispersed workforce? Will this work for my employees that are part-time, that don't have a corporate email address? Can I use the same platform for polls, for surveys, for newsletters? Can I upload video? Can they upload video? Right? Can you think about all the employees that you have that experience your brand? If you're at a CPG brand, for example, and you have employees that are out you know, say you work for a cereal brand and your employees are just out buying cereal and they see your cereal in the aisle and the end cap's wrong, they can take a picture and upload it and send it directly to the team. Like, you just extended your footprint as people who are keeping an eye on your brand too. Like, there's so many ways as you think of the nuances of your workforce. You know, we talked about healthcare, being able to have access to something on mobile is really important to them that they can go in and check later. But just you think about your workforce and you look at the technology tools that are available, I'd say consider what things are important to you. And can you use the same platform to really streamline all of the different ways that you need to communicate? Newsletters, surveys and polls, receiving information, sharing information. Can it be multimedia? We know that video is super important. We use animated GIFs all the time. You know, there's just employee expectations haven't just shifted around their employee experience, but it's also the kind of communication they get, that it's going to be dynamic and fun and interesting and not super polished and perfect, right? It's not all about these. And so I think you just have to kind of evaluate what components are really critical for your workforce, and then what tools available integrate with the other tools available that you need and can really sort of streamline your effort. Because the last thing we need as communication professionals is one more thing to manage. And the last thing our employees need is one more place to try and get information. It needs to be very clear to them, right?
Yeah. And with that, both of you, I know we could probably talk about this all day long, but we are close to the top of the hour. So Robyn, if you could actually go ahead and just share the information about the tweet chat that you guys are going to have. So we have a bunch of people who have still asked questions. We have not gotten to them. We'll make sure to follow up with you. And for anyone who would like to kind of continue this conversation with both Mark and Ragan, we're going to go ahead and just flip to the next slide. And all of the information is here. Let's keep this conversation going. They're going to be live on Twitter for the next 30 minutes or so, answering any other additional questions that you have.
Yeah, and if your questions didn't get answered, as Meredith said, we'll follow up with you. But you can also tweet at Mark or tweet at the Ragan Communication and PR Daily team, tweet at Dynamic Signal, tweet at me. Twitter, again, is another great platform for communication. And so we're excited to hop on over there for this tweet chat. And hey, you guys want to take a stab at video or photo, you can ask a video question and tweet that to us with the hashtag. Let's do multimedia.
Perfect.
Mark, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your expertise.
I was paying attention. I'm just getting on Twitter right now.
Good. I like it. Mark, you have so much experience in this space, and you know everyone, and you've really watched it transform over the last few decades, and then this incredible ramp of transformation and digital transformation that we've seen over the last few years. And your insights are just invaluable. So thank you so much for joining us and sharing them with our audience. And Mark Emmons on our team did a great profile of Mark Ragan that is on our blog post. If you want a little bit more of a closer look at Mark, you head over to the Dynamic Signal blog and
as if they haven't had enough of me already. Hey, could I just say one final thing? I just want to remind everyone, if anybody listening is interested in joining my Communication Leadership Council, these are the kinds of discussions we have all the time. So they should email me at mark.ragan@ragan.com, and I'll make sure we get to them. And I want to thank you, Robyn and Meredith, and the DICI team, Becky Graby, everyone. You guys are amazing. You really have affected the industry in really good ways. And Robyn, you're very eloquent in what you said a few minutes ago about content. I want to leave everyone with your words and what you said, which is, it's great to have all the fantastic platforms. It's absolutely vital to have mobile platforms, but it always comes back to content. It comes back to having fun. It comes back to being a good brand journalism, doing wacky videos, doing things. And I want to leave the audience with this one thing. How do you know if your content is good? You know what the answer to that is? Would you read it? Would you watch it? All the measuring tools in the world when it comes to whether your content is good, those are great tools to have. But at the end of the day, do you think it's boring? Do you think it's irrelevant? Do you think it's hitting employees where they live? If it doesn't get past the Robyn or the Meredith filter, how is it going to resonate with everyone else?
Sure. Yeah. That's
And I'm
great.
done.
No, thank you. You're not done. You're heading over to Twitter for a tweet
Yes,
chat now.
right now.
Awesome. We will see you guys there. Thanks so much.
Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you. Bye.